And now let's bring you the latest on the aftermath of the Cyclone Michaung. The good news is the worst is over. India's Met Department has said that the severe cyclonic storm is likely to weaken in the next couple of hours. Michaung made a landfall in Tamil Nadu early this morning, leaving behind a trail of destruction. At least 12 people have died in Chennai due to the rain-related incidents. 11 others have been injured. Officials say over 18,000 people have been displaced and they have all been moved to relief camps. After making a landfall in Tamil Nadu, Michaung crossed Andhra Pradesh with a wind speed of 90 to 100 kilometers per hour. The Met Department has now issued an orange alert in Odisha. The state has been told to prepare for heavy to very heavy rainfall. Now let's look at the cyclone's aftermath. This is what Chennai looks like today. There are light showers today. Some Chennai residents claim they have been without electricity for over 30 hours. Water has entered their homes and flooded the staircases of buildings as well. Take a look. And reports say in some roads, water has reached up to chest level. The ground floor of a government hospital is inundated. The cyclone has once again brought the focus on the dangerous land encroachment near Chennai's lakes. Earlier this year, activists had warned how construction along lake bunds was making neighborhoods vulnerable to flooding. Today, residents of Chennai say that in some areas, water levels are increasing instead of receding. Did you know that the Chennai airport is built on floodlanes of the Adyar River, which explains the visuals we were showing you yesterday of flooded runways and waves on the tarmac? Again, the good news here is that authorities have managed to bring the airport back to operation in record time. This morning, a Vistara flight from Mumbai became the first to land in Chennai post the cyclone. The flight landed at 11:19 a.m. IST. Now we have a photo for you, but the ripple effect of yesterday's cancellations continue. India's low-cost carrier Indigo alone has had to cancel 550 flights. Let's take a look at Andhra Pradesh now. At least 3,000 people have been evacuated from 64 villages. They have all been moved to relief camps. In Amravati, the beaches are lined with fish brought in by strong tides. Here is one of the videos in circulation on social media. And something similar is also happening in Chennai too, with people trying to catch fish on flooded roads. Here's another viral video. And as we report on these stories, one can't help but ask whether this is the new normal. Consider this. In a span of just 35 hours, starting Sunday, Chennai received 43 centimeters of rain. Between the 1st of October and the 4th of December, Chennai received 89 centimeters of rain. This is 29% more than normal. Now, as the world fights several wars, America is fighting its own, where its own home front is now a battleground. The United States of America has the most amount of guns in the world, and by extension, the most amount of firearms-related fatalities. Gun violence remains alarmingly high, with mass shootings and firearm-assisted suicides on the rise. In a nutshell, America is undergoing an epidemic, bringing back the same old debate. Is the right to bear arms trumping the right to life? Let's unpack this complex reality of America's ongoing gun war.
The rising tide of gun violence in the United States is a phenomenon that doesn't just make headlines. It tears at the social fabric of the nation, becoming a painful episode of national trauma. To begin to understand these complex dynamics, we need to start with the numbers. The United States has seen an alarming increase in mass shootings over the years. Here is a snapshot of numbers over the decade. In 2014, there were 273 reported mass shootings. The number jumped to 336 in 2015 and continued to rise to 383 in 2016. There was a slight drop to 348 in 2017, but that was the year of the deadliest shooting in modern US history, the Las Vegas massacre, where over 50 lives were lost and 500 people injured. The trend picked up again in 2018 and has been steadily climbing, reaching a shocking 690 by 2021. By 2022, the country experienced 647 mass shootings, and as of the 26th of October this year, there have already been 565 deaths in mass shootings. The most recent incident took place in Maine, during which 18 people died. But mass shootings are just the tip of the iceberg. In 2021, gun violence reached its highest, claiming nearly 49,000 lives in the United States. Of these, more than half were due to suicide. These numbers shed light on both the mental health crisis and the gun violence epidemic. Homicides, unintentional deaths, and law enforcement-related deaths also figure into these grim statistics. The international perspective is startling. 80.5% of all homicides in the US involve a firearm, compared to 40% in Canada, 11% in Australia, and a mere 4% in England and Wales. This is in a country where there are more guns than people, with a ratio of 120.5 firearms per 100 residents, according to recent reports. Now, what do the people say? 57% of Americans support stricter gun laws, yet the debate is heavily polarized along party lines. And the influence of powerful gun rights lobbies, like the National Rifle Association, cannot be overstated. They have consistently outspent gun control advocates in the political arena. Now, turning to 2023, the numbers remain bleak, with over 35,000 deaths and counting. And once again, over half of these deaths are suicides, adding the mental health aspect into the already deadly mix. These aren't just numbers or statistics, they're fathers, mothers, children whose lives are cut short. States like Texas, California, and Florida top the charts in these tragedies. Law enforcement-related fatalities are another aspect to this crisis. This year alone, over 1,100 people have been killed in police-involved incidents, while more than 40 officers have died in the line of duty, highlighting a complex and polarizing issue. The rise of gun violence in the United States is complex and multifaceted. It's tied to the very roots of the nation. It is entangled in its constitution and enmeshed in a heavily charged political and cultural landscape. Now, a legal battle is unfolding at the heart of the nation. According to a report published in The Hill, the U.S. Supreme Court is currently weighing a case that could redefine the balance between public safety and gun rights. What is at stake? A law that bars domestic abusers from owning firearms. The decision's potential impact is immense. This case raises and ties into a pertinent question. Does the right to own a firearm outweigh the right to live? In most parts of the world, the answer is a resounding no. But in today's America, that's a debate that continues to rage. Historically, the Second Amendment was seen as a protection for state militias, not individual gun ownership. Recent interpretations, however, have pivoted toward a more personal right to bear arms, even extending to public spaces. As seen in the landmark cases of District of Columbia versus Heller and New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, these judicial shifts are not just a domestic concern, but also a global one. They put the U.S. at odds with basic human rights concerning protection of life, liberty, and security of person. Human rights groups have long been calling for a re-evaluation of U.S. gun policies to align with these fundamental principles. But will America finally lift?
5 days prior to the most devastating attack in Israeli history, a warning possibly emerged on the stock exchanges. The fact that some individuals within the Israeli security establishment might have had prior knowledge about the Hamas attack is now common knowledge. Yet, it is becoming apparent that certain investors who were aware of it in advance racked up millions of dollars in profits from the terror attack. This is our cover story, where we're exposing the vultures of war. You see, the Israeli authorities are currently probing allegations put forth by 2 U.S. researchers. They say that certain investors exploited information about Hamas's attack plans to make themselves rich. How? By short selling Israeli shares. You heard that right. They knew about Hamas's plan to attack, to abduct, and they used this knowledge to bet against the Israeli economy. A research by law professors Robert Jackson Jr. at the New York University and Joshua Mitz of Columbia University found significant short selling of shares leading up to the attacks that triggered the war. For the unversed, short sellers place bets on shares that they expect to fall in price. They pay a fee to borrow shares in a company and then sell them in the hope of buying them back at a lower price, thereby pocketing the profit. So how did the researchers find this out? They cited short selling of an exchange-traded fund that broadly tracks the performance of the Israeli stock exchange. That suddenly and significantly spiked on October 2nd. Now, that was 5 days before Hamas launched the attack in the south of Israel, triggering the war. Just before the attack, short selling of Israeli securities on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange increased dramatically. The researchers looked at the Israeli exchange-traded fund. It is a common way for people to make investments in Israel. On any given day, it has around 2,000 shares sorted. But on October 2nd, that shot up over 227,000 shares. The researchers who detected this trading activity described it as extremely unusual. It was profitable. The shares sold short for one Israel company alone yielded a profit of nearly $900,000. Now, the 2 professors conducted a series of comparisons. They scrutinized data spanning over the past 13 years to determine if similar patterns emerged prior to other big moments of instability in Israel. Their aim was to validate their observations, so they drew parallels with events such as the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, the COVID-19 pandemic, and more recently the judicial reform initiative of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which prompted millions of Israelis to take to the streets in protest. They found that the short-selling activity in early October was really extraordinary, even when you compare it to those periods of instability, which were many. Something similar had happened before, though. On October 3rd, on April 3rd, a couple of days before the Jewish holiday of Passover, the study links this to an Israeli media report claiming Hamas had initially planned its attack for the eve of Passover. You know what they found? It was almost the same magnitude. What are the odds? Well, all of this led them to their conclusion that trades were not a coincidence, but a tactic by someone who knew the attack was coming. The researchers say it's virtually impossible that all this happened by chance. Now, the next piece of the puzzle is to figure out who was betting against the Israeli economy. Who are the vultures profiteering from a tragedy? How did they know about Hamas's plan to attack? Well, the truth is finding out exactly who made the trades and who earned the profit is exceedingly difficult. Even the researchers are pessimistic. It's not so easy. To stop this sort of trading from happening is really problematic. Instead, the researchers who detected the unusual activity suggest a different agenda. They say that what we really need to be asking is how do we internalize this sort of trading information in the public conscience? From an intelligence standpoint, From a policy standpoint, what are these signals? What are they teaching us? That's a good starting point. There's growing evidence of a massive intelligence failure that preceded the October 7th attacks. For example, just last week, an Israeli soldier told an American news outlet that her team reported unusual activity on the Gaza side of the border. Her team detected unusual activity 6 months before the attack took place. She reported it to her seniors and superiors in the Israeli Defense Forces, but she wasn't taken seriously. A missed signal, of course. Similarly, 5 days before the attack took place, which triggered this ongoing war, the stock market was screaming. There was something going on, yet they missed it. How is Israel responding to this revelation? They are investigating it. In response to the new study, the Israeli securities authorities said that the matter is known and is under investigation. But the question is, so many clues, yet the attack took place. Israel was caught unprepared when Hamas launched its assault. Israeli families grappled with the abduction of their loved ones, and as a result, Palestinians in Gaza bore the brunt of the Israeli forces. Nearly 16,000 Palestinians have died in Gaza due to Israel's relentless campaign to eliminate Hamas. Perhaps the individual truly benefiting from this war is the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Despite all the failures and public outcry, the war has given him a justification to remain in power. Before the conflict started, he faced charges of fraud, bribery, breach of trust in 3 cases filed in 2019. In fact, on Monday, a corruption trial resumed against him after a 2-month pause. He, of course, did not attend the hearing. If convicted in the bribery case, he faces up to 10 years in prison or fines.